Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome to Talking Shit with your boy Sophisticated Jerk. And today, man, I wanted to go over this one clip that I seen of MTR doing a response to DJ Akademiks when he was on a Fresh and Fit podcast. And the whole background of that, they were discussing a cost situation, and DJ Akademiks threw a critique at like MTR and Abba and Preach because, they give a commentary on a lot of, relationships that play out. But DJ Akademiks was bringing up that, we don't ever get to see their relationships play out. So why are we kind of listening to them? So I got my own takes on this. Let me go ahead and pull up the video and we'll just start breaking it down and I'll give my opinions on different sections. So
I was watching this one guy. I think his name is Mediocre. You guys know?
Yeah.
Now, the reason I'm mentioning him,
tutorials and reviews, baby. You can call me MTR for short.
And I was watching also Abba and Preach. I was starting to realize the pylon effect.
Okay.
And I started to say, because no matter what you want to say about me, if I give my own personal view, you could easily be like, well, how has your relationships been? I'm starting to dislike the guys who they are the soapbox guys. We've never seen a woman they've been with.
The Christmas stimulus check has hit again. None other than DJ Akademiks.
And real quick, before I'll let him introduce the video. I think this is a good conversation because it kind of highlights the different perspectives that people could see each situation and, how people want to give and receive advice. So that's why I think this is a good conversation because it's going to highlight some things that I think people need to kind of start focusing on. So let me get back to the video.
Has mentioned me on the Fresh and Fit podcast. And although I use the word mention, more accurately would be criticize me during a recent Fresh and Fit show. Now, I don't want to take his words out of context. I want to go direct to source to provide commentary over the things that he said. But I think that it's an appropriate discussion to have, especially one with the family. Let's lock in for this one. Without further ado, at this point in the conversation, everybody's currently speaking about Akash Singh being a pay pig situation to a disrespectful wife. Let's review.
And I value it very highly, by the way. But like
the married guys don't show it. Yeah.
They don't. I don't see it from them.
Yeah.
I don't see them because they're in these toxic marriages that are not really about the things, you're talking about like, breaking up with the kids and all the rest of it. But these marriages, in many respects, in many dimensions, in many aspects, they're not real anyway.
Yeah.
They're not real.
But I'll be honest.
You know that. You know enough celebrities to know that.
Hold on. A lot of people.
That's your friend, though.
Hold on. A lot of. Well, here's the thing.
These marriages are not real.
And here's the thing, right? So, I don't believe this criticism is something that he's going to be like, hey, I'm getting a divorce, like attorney. And this is where I say, like, I was watching this one guy, and what's his name? I'm not dissing him or shouting him out, but I guess I am shouting him because I think his name is Mediocre. You guys know?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the reason I'm mentioning him,
tutorials and reviews, baby. You can call me MTR for short.
Tell him put some respect on it.
Is that and I was watching also Abba and Preach, and and I was starting to realize the pylon effect.
Okay.
And I started to say, because I'm one of those people who, no matter what you want to say about me, if I give advice or if I give my own personal view, you could easily be like, well, how has your relationships been? I'm starting to dislike the guys who they are the soapbox guys. We've never seen a woman they've been with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So like, for example,
point.
they have ammo be like, whoa, what fresh? There's a Chinese girl and there's Miranda. When it comes to Myron and so-and-so. These guys, they get to talk like they're the best, but we've never seen them with a woman.
Well, I got f***ed in the ass.
Wait, hold on.
He admitted this.
Yeah,
Real quick, let me pause right there because they kind of said a lot. So the one guy, I don't know his name, man, but when he was just like, the relationships ain't real and all that, I got to give them some pushback because I think the issue with a lot of people, they feel like, I think because we live in a society now, man, where we watch so much like trash TV, it's like Housewives or whatever fucking city. You got Love and Hip Hop, Basketball Wives, and, each episode is damn near like people arguing, dysfunctional relationships. So everybody thinks like everything needs to be played out in the public. And what they don't realize is a lot of people, man, that especially if they got like healthy relationships, they're not gonna put their stuff on blast. They just know how to maneuver. And you know, for guys like he mentioned, MTR, Abba and preaching them, it's like, man, that's a good thing that their shit don't pay out in public. That means that they kind of managing, they know how to handle their business and they know how to conduct themselves to where it's not blowing up. So even if somebody say they got with a female and the relationship just didn't go right, they end up, you know, going their separate ways. You know, if a chick actually likes you and she's not toxic on all that dramatic stuff, it's like, man, people could go their own ways without having a public spat and things just going crazy and stuff. So that's why I think a lot of times people think you always should be advertising everything and it should be this like toxic display, because it kind of highlights what they see in relationships and it kind of shows what they kind of deal with on a regular basis. So, you know, like the one gentleman, like I was pointing out, like when he made that comment, it's just like, nah, man, shit. People tend to be quiet when they know how to operate. They just don't want all their stuff in public, man. They just ain't, you know, they know how to cut off. They know the times when they get attention and the times when they don't need to put the camera on them and everybody in their vicinity. And a lot of times people, like guys, want to showcase, you know, who they're with, because a lot of, especially when guys like say they come into success later in life or early, but they might not been that great with women. They want to showcase everybody, put them on display. You know, they're looking for validation from other guys and stuff. So when they see guys that don't do all that, they think that's weird. But it's just like, nah, guys that typically have females and stuff, they're just not looking for anybody else's validation. They're just like, hey, man, I'm with somebody. I don't give a damn what y'all think. I don't need the trophy girl just to try to please y'all and, you know, get some kudos from you and stuff. So that's kind of what it seems like they're painting, that type of picture. And sometimes that's kind of the demise for a lot of guys. Cause like I said, they just pulling anybody in their life based on looks to try to like look good for everybody else. And they're not vetting that female out if she got the right behaviors and stuff like that. And that's when they start running into issues. But all right, let me get back to the video.
He admitted this shit.
Wait, what? Forrest?
He literally got milked. He got fucked in the ass. He's trying to get the clip erased,
He said it.
but he literally, yeah, bro.
He
Like,
watched
yo,
it-
I'm on
watched it
those
off the
niggas
internet?
head tops.
No,
all
he's
2026,
heterosexual,
bro.
though.
Huh?
Well, why would he do that if he's heterosexual?
No.
Exactly. I'll send you the clip, bro.
I'll be honest. I wish that they didn't bring up Abba and Preach because, you know, Fresh and Fit has a long-standing beef with them. But I think that it kind of derailed from the conversation because I actually appreciate DJ Academics' thoughts right here. But let's let him conclude a couple of more before.
Because they've talked shit about
He's
you
not,
too.
nigga.
We like these niggas need to get cooked, bro.
Yeah.
Like he's either got to put on gloves and get the ass whooping, or I'm gonna just keep my fucking foot on his neck all 2026.
Anal.
Here's my thing.
Okay.
And I love everybody who are giving commentary.
Real quick, man. The whole beefing in the space, I understand, man. People throw shots and people take things personal. Because I know nobody wants to get talked about. But here's my thing, man. You can't take things personal, especially if you put yourself out in public in a bad manner. And what I mean by that, say like if I was a guy, I was a Kosh or something, and my situation blew up and I didn't have control over it. And say everybody started commentating on that. It was just like, damn, man, you know, Jerk is a simp. He's doing this and this. I'm not going to be mad at y'all because at the end of the day, as an adult, it's my responsibility to make sure that my shit is tight. You know, my female is on program, like we say in this space. You know, I got things under control. So like I said, I'm not going to sit there and get mad at everybody else for commentating how my shit's blowing out in the public eye and stuff like that. And instead of like clapping back at everybody and wanting to box, I'm going to listen to people. I'm like, you know what? I do need to get my shit under control and I'm slipping and let me make these adjustments. So I think people, man, they take stuff too personal and it shows, man, a level of like insecurity when you're doing this stuff because, you know, you can just change the habit. So you ain't the topic of these, the subject of these topics and stuff. So, man, that's why I think people need to pause a little bit. And it's just one of those things, man, because I fought my whole life pretty much. Like when I was younger, I used to get in a lot of trouble and stuff. And my cousins, they was like, man, come train in these gyms and do all this stuff. Because they was like, man, you need to calm down. And if you really want to fight, come hop in this gym and train. and go against people that's actually. So I just think, man, at the end of the day, people need to leave the whole fighting online shit alone, man. And if you go train, man, you start calming down because you start realizing who you are. You don't need to prove shit to nobody, man. Like I said, you start forming thick skin where you're just looking at shit. You could blow it off and crack jokes on yourself because it's like, man, you know who you are deep down inside. Where it's like, man, you ain't got to prove shit. So it's like somebody's talking shit, but like, you know what, man, I ain't worried about that stuff. And people could validate who you are and stuff because like people that be going to your gym and stuff, they be like, nah, son's official with them hands and stuff. You don't want them problems and stuff. So, but to do it in this manner, it just shows like they're kind of striking you to your core. You know what I'm saying? So they 9 times out of 10, they're never gonna run into you. So they're gonna just escalate up because they know it's getting to you now. So if I was just people, man, just information, I would never show nobody that they impacted me. Like I said, I'll make fun of my own situation because that's just how I am. If I slip up, I could just take ownership of it and be like, you know what, I did slip up, I fucked up. You know what, I ain't never gonna do that again. Thank y'all for giving me the input and feedback. Y'all right. And you see how quick shit will just blow over. And it would just show like you got a level of confidence and, you know, you're securing yourself because it's just like, man, you could just acknowledge it and take that accountability and people won't have shit else to say. But when you start clapping back, you got to address everything, you want box, man, this shit is just going to keep prolonging now. But shout out to Ack for like stepping over that and not getting sucked into all the hype. He's just like, let me attack the points and the logic behind this. So I give him credit for not even going down that lane and just like, hey man, I wanted to say this piece. I'm not trying to, you know, go that route. I just want to give my, you know, like I said, put some logic behind why I feel this way versus like emotional attacks.
The commentary seems so much more genuine when it comes from a place where people have also been vulnerable themselves. When people could say, hey, well, you've seen me not make the best decisions. So even when I'm speaking about this, like the Akademiks, and of course I'm being a little bit careful because that is my friend, but I'm like, hey, listen, I've been in one of those situations where I felt I'm with a woman and she's embarrassing me online.
Yeah.
She's doing it and she's doing it for her own benefit and almost climbing upon what it took me 15 years to build without her. And she's trying to almost shit on me to empower herself. And over time, and over time, that relationship dynamic changes. Because once she has some attention, she starts to talk to you a little bit different now.
She's looking at the guy that can take her to the next stop, right?
Exactly.
She's used you to get to stage 1, and now she's like, well, who's gonna get me to stage 2?
Monkey branching, of course.
Okay.
And when I'm giving advice about that or I'm giving my opinion, is because people could be like, I know sometimes the online content community, they're like, well, how could you talk? Because this is your history. That's why I could talk.
But how many people are...
First off, give me a round of...
I see what Ack is saying because it's like, man, that's why I said you should never shut down any perspective because, man, I hear a lot of time people want to shut people out of relationship conversations because say like if somebody ain't married and they're talking about marriage, they'll be like, oh, you can't talk about that. But I'd be like, nah, they can, man, because, you know, maybe they have parents that was married for 40 years so they could tell it from that perspective. They might have siblings or cousins that have been married a long time so they could speak to the relationship. Now, when you're talking about the specific details, we might want to turn and listen to the person that was married, but it's like everybody can give their perspective. So what Ack is kind of painting right here is like he's been in situations that's similar to say like Akash where he was embarrassed and stuff like that. So, man, he can give like specifics on that and how it felt. But where I think like DJ Akademiks is missing out on is just like, man, there's a whole nother perspective like MTR where it's like he talks about avoiding that situation altogether. So you ain't got to go down there. You ain't got to face the hardships. You ain't got to face the embarrassment. And I think a lot of times people personalize these situations and they don't want to hear the advice for certain people. It's almost kind of like they want to hear it from their own story and stuff, which is kind of why they're in that situation to begin with. Because I'll just tell you like this. I have a lot of friends and I talk to people on a regular basis where I try to give them information and you kind of have like two, I'll say groups of guys. You have the guys that, you know, they kind of learned early female nature. They took them lumps, them bruises, them bad situations. But they analyzed it quick, and they were like, man, I don't like this interaction that I had. Man, I want to get better results. So they kind of observed other guys and, got that information from people. They kind of humbled themselves and, put their ego to the side, put their pride to the side, and got that information. And you got the other group of guys where they're kind of egotistical and they're hard-headed. Because like I said, I have a ton of friends, man. I could try to give them all the information. I could break down any topic, and they kind of have that I know it all mentality. And it's just like, I ain't taking no information from anybody. And they keep going down the same path, having bad results and stuff because they just don't want to humble themselves. Because they kind of look at it like, I'm not going to go to that guy and get no information. Who is that person? I like I said, I know it all. So like they keep stumbling and stuff. So like I said, when people only want to get information from a specific source, or it has to be kind of brought to you in a certain manner. It's kind of like what we tell females, like they be tone policing and stuff. So that's kind of what it is in a way, where it's just like what Akademiks is trying to do right now. It's kind of a deflection tactic because it's like, instead of him just going to Akash and be like, look, Akash, man, you need to tighten up, man, because your shit's playing out here, man. You got to grab your nuts. This is how men should be talking to each other. This is what masculinity is supposed to be about. We're supposed to, still sharp and still. But he's trying to relate to the situation because he has some incidents that played out in the public. And now instead of, them kind of taking accountability, like I said before, like, you know what, man, I did fuck up. Instead of me trying to attack the messenger, MTR and these guys and trying to shine a light on them, like, whoa, what about your relationship? It's like, you know what? They got a point. My shit played out. It didn't look the best out here. And I didn't like this situation. So let me just fix it and take this input, be like, you know what, y'all, thank you for the feedback and keep it pushing. They want to start kind of focusing on the messengers. And it just shows, man, you're kind of they're not embracing growth. Because if you had a growth mindset, you would just be like I said, you would acknowledge that you already had a issue with those relationships and you want to improve them, and you'll take the information and just keep it pushing. So they're just like, nah, I'm going to shine the light on them and try to take the pressure off myself, which is, kind of emotional. And one of the issues I have kind of what they're doing right now is just like, man, we get on females for not taking accountability and deflecting and, trying to move the goalposts. And that's kind of what they're doing in this moment, getting mad at everybody, the boxing matches and shit, the fights. And it's just like, nah, man, you know what? Y'all maneuvered bad. And if y'all probably would have took some advice, man, y'all would have been in them positions where, like I said, you would have been the subject of these topics and stuff, and you wouldn't have had to face any like public humiliation and shit based on the decisions that you made. So it's not like people are putting themselves on a soapbox. It's just that most guys, I'll just say all guys been hurt by some female at some point, but you have the smart guys, the wise ones that's like, man, I'm not letting this happen no more. Let me get this information. Let me make these changes. So that happened early. So a lot of people might not see it because they rectified the situation early. So it never lingered and it didn't have to play out in public. But like the guys that keep on getting into situation, they're getting upset when people are talking to them because they're trying to get them to avoid it based on their experiences. Also, they're like, hey man, like I've been, maneuver this way so you can avoid these situations. But they're taking it personal instead of just taking the game. So that's kind of what's going on right now.
Applause for DJ Akademiks. I really appreciate him bringing up this very specific topic. However, I do think that there's some error in his ways of his thinking. To paraphrase what he's saying, it's difficult for him to provide commentary or give advice about relationships because, well, then people, the audience, is going to turn back and say, like, bro, what do you know? Look at what you're going through. For anybody unaware, DJ Akademiks has gone viral one too many times in regards to something that a chick that he's been involved with has done to him. Outright public disrespect. She's released photos of him half naked. She's put his life in danger by doxing his address. It's too much to name, and that's
crazy.
not this video's purpose. However, when these things happen to him, it serves for great social commentary because it's like, bro, Why are you choosing that type of woman? You've taken 15 years of your life honing in on your craft to contribute considerable value to the marketplace, but you left yourself vulnerable because you gave an unsavory, unworthy woman the keys to the castle. And that in turn turns into fantastic talking points that I can then transition into how can I help the average modern man today make choices or decisions that will not only not put their livelihood at risk, but also their life happiness at risk. Now, as I talk about this, I don't get the transition of why you begin not to like commentary YouTubers who you can't see their direct life. But listen, bro, I am not perfect. I've made many.
Let me stop right there. And like I said, the reason why they're trying to spin it a little bit, because it's just, like I said, they personalized it and they want to deflect a little bit. It's like, you know what, let me kind of turn a light on them so I ain't got to face the facts. And I like what MTR was saying, because one of the things, man, when you hear a lot of people talk and why they had like hardships in their life, one of the first things they're going to say is, you know, man, nobody ever broke stuff down or told me this. So a lot of us now are starting to kind of like break down scenarios and different situations that we see. And the reason why we use like celebrity ones is because, you know, everybody knows the celebrity. If I was going to use somebody that lived in my neighborhood, nobody would know who the fuck that was. So, you know, it's easier just to use a reference of a celebrity. I mean, damn, Act does the same thing. That's how he came up. And my man's a legend at the game doing this stuff. But it's just like, that's why people break it down, because it's just like, hey, man, like, if we want to get the youth to maneuver a different way and not have all these hardships, because, for example, I got a son that's like 24. You know, so I break down stuff to try to reach him and his friends, and I send them other people's clips that break down stuff so they could avoid these hardships. They could maneuver different. And, you know, it's working, because, you know, my son and them, man, they don't have all these issues because they've been listening. They're taking in the knowledge and moving right. So that's why people are starting to do it. So, again, it's not like people are trying to, you know, just go in on people. They're trying to be like, hey, man, if you maneuver this way and you avoid this, man, you ain't got to worry about the embarrassment. Now, this don't guarantee that you ain't going to ever have no issues, no breakups or no stuff like that. But it don't have to play out where, or you don't have to put yourself at danger by pulling in anything. And just one other point I wanted to address that MTR was talking about, because like another thing, I think a lot of the guys, because it's like Fresh and Fit and all them, they all had like some issues with some females. And then a lot of people, including myself, man, we broke the topics down. And, you know, as men, man, we're going to take some swipes, man. I grew up in the 90s. I mean, you had to have thick skin. People would clown you. Like I said, when we was younger, we was doing some simp shit. Them dudes was calling us out, calling us weak and stuff. But we never tried to clap back, man. We took our punches and we're like, damn, man, you know what? I don't want to hear this shit no more. I don't want to be viewed as this. Let me change. And I think that's the difference between our era, man. Like I said, we understood that even though that those guys was talking shit and, man, it kind of hurt a little bit, they had our best interests at heart, man, where they wanted us to excel and do better. So yeah, they had that tough love and stuff. They clowned us and shit, but man, we just took it and made those changes, man. And a lot of those guys, man, helped a lot of us out that did have favorable results with females, man, where we didn't have to stumble too much. So I think that's where the younger generation, because I'm 46, man. So like people under me, it's like, man, y'all got to get thicker skin and stop trying to challenge everything, man, and just get the wisdom so y'all can maneuver differently. Because, man, there's like DJ Akademiks, Fresh, Fit, all these dudes, man, like they put themselves in that 1%, hit a level of success. And in a way, man, we're kind of congratulating y'all. That's why people be upset, where it's just like, damn, man, why y'all be letting these like bum ass chicks around y'all, man? Like, y'all done built yourself up here, man. These chicks shouldn't be just getting access to y'all. So I think that's really the conversation we're having. It might sound harsh sometimes, but it's just like, nah, man, y'all should be up here, man. Y'all should be like, people should be singing y'all praises and stuff because of what y'all did. Y'all were able to do the skill set y'all was able to build. But, you know, when you bring these females in and all this shit plays out, it's just like, man, now the conversation shifts from your talents to, you know, this crazy shit. So it's just like, man, just like I said, get over it, make those adjustments and make those changes, man, and don't personalize it. Cause I think that's what they're kind of doing at a point. And to a certain degree, man, we didn't have like social media, so stuff is magnified. So maybe we do need to kind of tone it down a little bit when we throw in some shots and stuff. But it's just, man, we do want to see people excel. So I think that's why we giving these commentary on these breakdowns, because people are just more or less shocked. Like, damn, man, like, why are y'all letting these motherfuckers do this stuff? Why are you just thirsty? And I think the issue with a lot of this, where guys do this, because I'm going to try to break down the mindset a little bit. I think when these guys build up and they come to success very fast, like they did, you know, it's like the mindset didn't catch up all the way to prevent a lot of this stuff from happening and stuff. So it's just like I said, when guys are still trying to validate themselves to other men, it's like, okay, man, damn, I got the money now. I done built up. I got access to all these women. You know, they going kind of crazy and shit. So they're just pulling anybody in. So they have no requirements or anything. And so when men start pedestalizing women and they're infatuated by the beauty, like I said, they don't have no requirements, no standards on them. It's just like, hey, be pretty. This bitch is bad. Okay, I'm going to show her out to everybody. And then the females could pick up on that energy. When guys start pedestalizing women, females can sense that dynamic. So they're looking at these guys like, oh, okay, shit, since you're pedestalizing me, now it flips from the guy having the leverage and the leadership to that female kind of starting to dictate stuff. And that's where we see them with all those unrealistic expectations. That's when we be hearing them talk. They're like, oh, you need to pay me for my time, you know, for me being you being in my presence and stuff. That's how they be talking about these guys when, you know, they're just leading with the money and stuff and they don't build up in the other areas. Like I said, their mindset, you know, if they ain't hitting the gym and stuff like that, and they're being consistent across the board and having that growth, them females look down at them. And that's when they start treating them guys like shit. You know, even though those guys have money and status, those females don't care. Cause we see a lot of celebrities, whether it's like Tyrese, fucking Shannon Sharp just got cleaned out. And these are guys that hit the top of the peak, you know, legends in the game in certain areas, and women don't care. They come in there, if they could sense that you operate like that, they're like, shit, you know what? You got to pay me for my time. And typically when the guy he could start sensing that dynamic when the female is like, oh, she ain't there for the right reasons. You know, eventually the guy's going to want to cut the money, but that's when the female is going to start doing the allegations. She's going to do a tell-all book, you know, going to try to put a baby on them and do all kind of crazy stuff. So we just see it more and more. And that's where guys are just like, hey, man, like, y'all need to be careful because, you know, just because you got the status and the money, man, don't mean like you're resolved from all that, because, you know, that was the message before. And that's why I always gave pushback to the red pill stuff, because I was just like, hey, man, y'all kind of just one dimensional with it, you know, and y'all kind of like sitting ducks. And I used to tell them this because I'm like, y'all think just get the money, you know, level up in some areas and the females will come and pay for everything. And then, you know, they'll be happy, they'll be submissive and stuff. And I was like, man, they don't operate like that. Y'all go, I was like, make them invest in you, make sure you select the right one. So that's been my message since I came on the scene. And, you know, I used to get a lot of pushback, but now we're seeing it where everybody's starting to change their tune and shit. So that's where we're trying to communicate to like a DJ Akademiks in them. But like I said, since they're kind of still have that ego and they're being hard-headed, man, they're just not listening to the message. But this is why they keep on dealing with problems. And until they make that pivot and stop deflecting, they're going to keep on having issues and stuff. Because these females, man, they know how to spot a lick. That's the other side. You know, when they see guys that operate chaotic like this, women prefer to go down those paths with guys that ain't got the structure and, you know, got no standards and boundaries, because those type of women that they pull in, they know they can manipulate those situations. They know they already coming in there with the strategy. They're like, shit, I'm gonna get some money. And if anything happens, I could file the allegations, lawsuits. And that's why you see them a lot of times. They try to stay away from guys that have that structure and have their shit together, because they know they can't get off on them. They know they can't just leave with vagina. Those guys ain't gonna pedestalize them. So in a way, when guys operate like this, it's almost like I used to tell people, because I used to get on the tricking and the sipping, and they used to get mad. And I'm like, man, when you trick and you simp, you put yourself at the bottom of the pecking order. And you signal to all those type of females that's transactional, that's like trying to get over on dudes, you let them know, like, okay, this motherfucker pedestalizes vagina. I got him. He's going to worship me, you know, and they go seek those guys out. And that's why a lot of times, like, you see them with, they don't like guys that got structure because, like I said, they ain't going to get over on them. So they go and drift to them guys. So those guys are looking at it like, oh, man, I'm getting all these women. They like me and all this. But the women are coming there with foul intentions to clean those guys out. So that's why people try to teach the avoidance, risk mitigation like MTR is doing, because it's just like, man, it don't end well. And it always ends with, like, a lot of these guys have to come out, explain stuff. They have to face a little bit of, like I said, the public humiliation and stuff like that. And we just don't want to see y'all like that. So it's just like, man, y'all got to wake up. Sorry for the long rant, man. I just, like I said, I get worked up on these topics, man, because I hate seeing dudes that build themselves up, hit those high magnitudes, have to face this type of shit. And we see it just too many times, man. It's like a repetitive cycle. I used to think like, man, we ain't gonna be doing these topics that long. I was telling dudes on my channel, and man, 3 years and we don't lack material when it comes to females cleaning out guys and celebrities and guys with a lot of money. I got droves of, like, I can't even get to all the videos. That's how bad it is.
Many, many mistakes within my life. However, I'm also a watcher of other people's mistakes. And in combination of other people's mistakes and the mistakes that I've made in my private life, I've been able to reduce my risk as my face or my image has become public. Even with that, I've talked through women levying false allegations against me.
And real quick, what MTR is just explaining right there, it's called wisdom. So when you could sit back, observe, and look at other people's mistakes, and you could just take that apply to your life, man, that's the smartest path you could go. And that's where, like, he differs from, like, a DJ Akademiks, because DJ Akademiks is, he wants to give you the perspective of somebody that's going through it. MTR is giving you the perspective of somebody that's, like, avoiding it altogether. He's operating the right way. He don't put everything in the public eye and stuff like that. So, like I said, a lot of guys are looking at it like, oh, what relationships he has, instead of looking at MTR like, damn, okay, man, MTR ain't never had no shit play out in the public. You know what, man, I see that, you know, he's hitting the gym and doing this stuff. So obviously, man, he could pull. Man, let me ask some questions how he maneuvers. But see, like I said, in order to ask them type of questions to get that insight, you would have to humble yourself. And a lot of men don't want to do that because they can be like, man, I ain't about to ride nobody's dick, you know, to get some information. And they would rather experience all them hardships and that bad stuff than, you know, humble themselves and ask them questions. So that's why they end up in those repetitive bad cycles and shit, getting taken advantage of. So it's like, if they would have just asked somebody and got that info, could have avoided a lot of that stuff and not faced that level of embarrassment that they faced. But instead, they're so focused on not being embarrassed by asking somebody for some insight. It's a crazy dynamic.
Years before, I was up on YouTube to inform my majority male audience of the mistakes that I made within that process. Those videos where I talked about it are still public, by the way. And when I started off my channel back in 2019, 2020 era, I used to always have women. That's how I used to do content, was women in my life would come in and I'd be like, hey, you want to do some content? And they would come down, sit right next to me, and we would talk about modern dating, relationship topics. But so many of my talking points focus in the identification of unworthy women, unmarriageable women, women that you should never move into your house so that they can go back later and do what your former chick did to you. These are the type that you either ignore or deal with in the short term and throw them back to the streets from where they came. Ain't nobody perfect, but as a man, even not a public figure like yourself, you have to move with strategic directions. You have to calculate where you are vulnerable at and reduce your vulnerabilities. And the closest person that you have to you as a man, more often than not, is going to be the woman by your side. Just because my L's haven't been experienced within the public eye doesn't reduce the value that I try to contribute with this platform. This is kind of like saying, you know, I am a cancer survivor, which I am. So because I've avoided death through cancer, Can't no one else, no dietitian, no oncologist, no preventative health medical doctors, nobody else can speak about how to prevent death from cancer, but you negate them because they haven't experienced cancer. The logic actually doesn't make sense. And in fact, I think that men that are in the public eye where you haven't seen calamity within their life, and especially if you talk about how to be anti-calamity of selecting women, I think it actually shows more evidence that perhaps I'm doing something correct. The interesting component about this entire conversation is that DJ Akademiks is, I believe his formative years were in New York. He grew.
Let me stop right there. So again, it kind of circles back to what I was saying, man, where I think so many people, we're just so conditioned to like seeing all this drama play out. We think it's got to be everywhere, relationships, in every aspect of your life and stuff. So yeah, people do get shocked when they see, you know, people that know how to maneuver. And like I was saying before, man, when females, you know, see guys that have structure, a lot of the ones that want to take advantage of guys, they end up avoiding them and try to target the guys that they see a lot of chaos in their life. So like when they see dudes get caught up with like females, other females are like, shit, you know what? I'm about to go over there and I see he don't operate right. Okay, I could go get him. And since he's, you know, operates like that, you know, if I file allegations, they could stick because this person don't operate right. So man, when you start seeing like Diddy's and all those guys and stuff, it's because when they operate like that, them females, hey, they could file anything because they already know that person's patterns because it plays out in the public. And that's the danger of being like chaotic by nature, because you start drawing in a lot of people that have like bad intentions. So that's why like also like guys like MTR and different guys that have that like structure and stuff operate the right way, they start drawing in the right women, because like women that have their stuff together, they don't want their stuff playing out in the public. You know, that's like game 101. They want dudes that shut their mouth, don't be talking, gossiping. So when they see them dudes that's like quiet, mysterious and shit like that, they're like, okay, you know what? Let me gravitate over there because my man, I don't never see nothing playing out. So you get two opposite ends. MTR is going to be start attracting the type of females that ain't without the drama, that's there for the right reasons, and guys that's chaotic and their shit keeps playing out. They're going to start drawing them females that, you know, come in there transactional, just want that bread. They want to set that guy up. They know it's going to be an easy lick. So that's why, men, it's just like, man, you got to be careful with these dynamics, man. And this this is why we try to preach this stuff so, you know, people wake up. And just one last thing, man, just like I said, I'm 46 years old right now. And I have about 5 friends that have their shit together, that maneuver the right way. All the rest of my friends' life is pretty much a mess. And that's because, man, they pedestalize women to just pull anybody in their life. And those type of females just destroy shit. Whether they paying like child support, they're trying to hit them for everything. Allegations, just dudes' lives is a mess. And you could see like the ones that operate right, because like I said, they'll be successful. They never been embarrassed and stuff. But like I said, the other group of guys that, you know, operated messy, didn't know how to maneuver properly, just always was playing catch up, you know, never could get ahead, man, because like I said, they just put them females on a pedestal and let them just like destroy their lives like that. So people, a lot of times they might only have a couple of bad experiences, so they don't think it's that bad, but it's just like, man, you keep toying around and you don't fix your shit, eventually it's just going to crash, man. And we see it playing out so much. Just talk to some people, man, and they would tell you about all the issues that people in their groups that had and stuff, and they could share some of this information with you.
Grew up probably 20 minutes away from where I grew up, although I'm a little bit older than him, so we wouldn't have bumped in or ran into each other. But let's keep it a buck. Young men that grew up in the 90s in New York, there's a certain, and I don't even know if it's like this anymore, there's a certain behavior type. Actually, I know that it is. There's a certain behavior type of the women in New York that often reflects the masculinity, or more accurately, the wounded masculinity of the dudes that are from New York. It wasn't until I left New York that I was just like, wait a minute, girls don't dap up guys as well? Like, no, that's just a New York thing, baby. The aggressiveness, the anti-soft deeply feminine. The loud, strong, rude, and independent behavior is so common in New York that as a man, as a young man, oftentimes, because that's all that you saw, you begin to normalize that. And along with your normalization, you became attracted to it because if they all act like that, then, you know, it is what it is. It wasn't until I moved out of New York and started to be perceptive towards behaviors in different portions of the country that I was just like, oh, okay, so it was just area specific, right? Like there's commonalities amongst women anywhere, or generalities is more accurate. But the behavior types that were attractive in New York, you wouldn't see it as frequently in other places. And with that, I picked up that those behavior types, you know, the roller coaster, the toxicity, the drama, the ups and downs also don't lead to long-term relationship viability or consistency. So I actually empathize with DJ Akademiks, who finds himself in that situation of a chick trying to get one over on him or trying to insult or shame or embarrass him in public after she feels like she didn't get her way. But because he normalized components of her ridiculous ass behavior in private and avoided the red flags, it left them exposed. It left them vulnerable. And she utilized that as ammo to get back at him later on. You should never give a woman like that access to your home. You should never give a woman like that access to your passwords, your keys. Now, an academic situation is actually more disgusting because, to my knowledge, he never gave her access to a microphone like in the Akash situation. So while I get components of his arguments, content from channel like mine would have helped him understand that he was dealing with a demon serpent hyena woman. And because I haven't been outed by one of those, it actually adds more credence to the platform as opposed to take it away. Anyway, let's listen to a couple of more.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what he's saying, yeah, chicks in New York and I'll say like the North East region, they definitely masculine. I'll say that. But the flip side, because, you know, I grew up in that region also, you know, you get used to like talking to those type of women, man. You could damn near talk to anybody. But I like how he kind of used that example to show like when you start accepting certain behaviors and you start tolerating it, that's one of the biggest issues also. And that, like, it kind of ties into the whole pedestalizing, being infatuated by beauty, because like I said, a lot of times when guys get that success, man, they kind of become one trick ponies because it's like, okay, I got the money. You know what? I'll toss the money, lure females in, you know, happy wife, happy life type shit. Like just throw money at the problem. And when them females they see you beneath them, because if a female don't like you, man, and she's only there for the resources, she already feels like you're beneath her. And like I said, she's like, you got to pay me for my time and my presence. So that's why she's just, she's there taking. And once they start, you know, staying in that dynamic, they start getting entitled. So that's why, like, when the guys typically want to start pulling the resources or, you know, they want to like quit that dynamic because, you know, they do want a relationship, but that female's like, oh, hell no, you trying to take my money? That's when all the drama starts, and that's when they start flipping out. So yeah, in act situations, that's what the females was trying to expose them. That's some terrible stuff that he had to go through, you know. So yeah, hopefully, like, moving forward, man, he don't put himself in no more of those type of situations, because yeah, they could easily, all these guys could get chicks that actually like them, but it's just like I said, dudes want the baddest to show off and stuff. And it's just like, man, you can't force nobody to like you. You can't pay for submission. I used to tell people that all the time. And you can't, just because you have the money and the status doesn't mean that they're just going to come around and change their ways. That very rarely happens. So that's why it's just like, man, you just have to get the person that likes you. You got to maneuver right. So when you see guys that maneuver the right way, don't have these issues, again, it's not like they're perfect. It's just that they're cool with getting somebody that likes them. So they'll be willing to drop down in looks and all that stuff just to make sure that they have a level of respect and they're not exposed to any like craziness.
Of his thoughts.
They're out there
Who knows?
speak with integrity like that and have those experiences and are prepared to talk about others. You're asking media figures to have that kind of
No, but it's the fans. I'm really talking to the fans. how could you listen to Abin preach when you don't know anything that they've been through?
Thank you.
How could you actually listen to this guy? And by the way, I like what this guy says, but he speaks
think he's talking about me.
in a idealistic form, as if y'all ever deal with a species called women, there is nothing perfect. You're gonna go through some shit, even
right.
if you have everything mapped out. It's not always gonna go good.
And this is where he's just got to get more knowledgeable, I say, with these things, man, because yeah, man, women are difficult to deal with. But that's why you do got to give some props to people that don't have shit blowing up. Because it's like every guy, if you ask them, they're going to tell you like, nah, man, we understand these dynamics. But this is, if you ask them, like, hey, man, why do you maneuver this way? Because, and they'll start breaking it down with the logic. But like I said, people are never going to humble themselves to ask those questions. So like with academics, he's making a lot of assumptions. Like in his mind, he's thinking like when guys give advice and they don't have their shit playing out, he's almost like he said, you're on that soapbox and you're acting like your shit don't stink or you don't face any type of issues. And guys never say that. Guys would just tell you like, hey, man, I learned early. You know, I dealt with that stuff and I pivoted. You know, this is why I maneuver like this. This is why I search for this type of woman. This is why I look for this. So they'll give you a bunch of like I said, they'll give you the logic and the solutions with it. But like I said, the conversations never get to that because when somebody just gives some advice, they take it as like criticism, harsh criticism and stuff, and they go on defense. So it's like you can never really have that conversation because I feel like, say he would have reached out to MTR, he seemed like a type of guy that would pick up that phone and he'll be willing to walk anybody, speak about this stuff, and he'll tell you why he maneuvers that way. And the reason why a lot of guys maneuver that way is because they had experiences or they seen other people's experiences. But no, like I said, nobody's coming out here saying they perfect. It's just, nah.
Look at Tom Brady.
Listen, it's not that I speak in an idealistic way. It's that I focus on risk mitigation. Risk mitigation. I know it ain't no perfect, baby. I'm not perfect. All right? And I always say that on the channel, but what I say though, this is a critical thinking channel, one of which I restore power to men and give clarity to women. And I utilize real life examples to be able to do so. And that Akash situation, there was just so much meat on that damn bone. I had to go off on that as much as what I could. But I appreciate him acknowledging the things that I'm saying as being correct or beneficial. I just think that we disagree into the value or the perception of the advice given because the L was suffered publicly. I mean, shit, even if you take a look at Fresh
And before he starts breaking down more, another way, if you are curious to why you want to take some advice, because he was talking to the crowd and stuff, look how people conduct themselves. So like some of the things I kind of look for consistency in somebody's life. So if they got good communication skills, man, they ain't scared to pull up, because I seen MTR talk to various women and he looked comfortable. So it's like you could tell there's some like comfortability when he's talking to females. Also, man, he keeps his style game up. You know, he's clean cut. So that's another indicator that people, they're either in professional settings or they understand like, you know, professional women and women that got their stuff together. You know, you got to be presentable. You know, he's hitting the gym. He's not always like just talking about chasing women and stuff like that. So you could tell like, man, he just don't put, you know, chasing females at the forefront. He talks about like success. So like I said, he's consistent in a lot of multiple areas where he shows that discipline. So me, if I'm going to go get some advice from a guy and, you know what I'm saying, because first of all, you could get advice from anybody. That's one of the things. But if I was like, wanted to get some advice based on like all the metrics that somebody does, I'm gonna look at all those factors. I'm gonna look if he's disciplined in multiple areas. So I think that's a good indicator to see if somebody's taking advice and actually executing it. Because as a men, we're supposed to be men of action. You're supposed to be doing stuff. And that's the key piece, because it's like, man, we can sit around and talk all day, but at a certain point, you're supposed to be executing what you like, learning, applying it to yourself, and making sure that you got that structure. So that's, like I said, I'll look for all those indicators.
Fit's platform. Some of the biggest dramas that they've had from a PR, from a public relations perspective, had to do with women. Fresh dealing with the Asian escort whore. And similar to the Akash situation, Akash, through not selecting correctly, not only put his own career in jeopardy, but also his business relationships as well. The flagrant podcast through his wife now will suffer to a degree. As men with things to lose, you have to be able to intelligently select a woman that lowers vulnerability, lowers risk with as much fervor as you put into creating whatever it is in your life that you don't want to lose. That's why Fresh messing with the Asian escort was so crazy, because, you know, it put the entire Fresh and Fit platform in a position of vulnerability, open to attacks. I mean, the majority of their platform does battle against the ideologies of these modern hoes. So to get caught up by one, which enabled her to wreak havoc, your ops were able to utilize them. I'm pretty sure able to utilize them strategically to make more money off of the brand, but that's due to the actions. There's a big reason why you'll never have like an Andrew Tate talk about his relationships, because he's such a big ass public figure. People have caught him and his girl or girls out in different places, but he doesn't ever talk about them. There's a reason why Kevin Samuels never talked about the women that were in his life, even though he got all these accusations of being gay. It's because they want to tighten up the ship as much as possible. I've even tried to collaborate with women with platforms, and then after a couple of the
And real quick, man, I was listening to like the CEO, and I forgot his name, man, because I was listening to it earlier, and he was kind of breaking down. He was just like, if I seen a dude that was like a simp, and he was just like having public blowouts and stuff and couldn't control himself, he was just flat out like, I wouldn't fuck with him. Like business wise, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, because that showed me a person that is just on self-destruct mode. They can't control their own life, and they damn sure ain't gonna be able to conduct a business. And this was like a multi-billionaire CEO, major corporation, and he was just blunt with it. And it's funny because somebody was asking me that before, where they were like, man, would you do business with like somebody that operated? I was like, hell nah. And I was breaking down the similar things. And this was like a couple months ago, so I'm not even directing this towards them, but it's just like, you know, I was breaking it down to him. I think Stan was asking me, and he was just like, yeah, would you conduct business with somebody like that? And I was like, hell nah. Because a lot of times it's just like dudes that attach themselves to like a lot of drama, man, it shows signs of them being emotional. And if somebody's emotional, man, they have a lot of ups and downs, and you know, they get in relationships, it goes left, you know, they hit those lows and depression and stuff. So man, like I said, you can't go on that emotional roller coaster with them. And, you know, all the drama could be bad for business. So sometimes, you know, luckily, like these guys hit high levels of success, but even then it's just like, man, you might be blocking a lot of business when it comes to like all this public stuff blowing out like this. And, you know, it could push away some of the big dollars that people possibly want, because they're probably looking at it like, yeah, you know, I like these individuals, but I just can't attach my name to like all this craziness and stuff. So you are losing opportunities in business, because yeah, multiple people have said this. So it's out there in the public. And then one last thing, I think a lot of guys that maneuver like this, because I always try to tell people I'm talking to, I'm like, hey man, you keep going down these paths, man, you're eventually going to have kids, and you know, you want to lead by example, because if you're out here and you're seen as like a emotional man, a weak man, kind of like Akash, just imagine, man, when you're like a celebrity and this stuff is like playing out on videos like this, because people are doing breakdowns, they're giving commentary, and man, you're just seen as a weak man. And now you're going to go to, say, like if you have a son, like, hey man, you need to be masculine, you need to do this. And then all of a sudden the kids in the schools teasing them, they're showing them clips of you just like getting clowned because you didn't have the discipline, the structure, and, you know, you didn't take none of this advice. So you're looking like a subpar male. You know, that could destroy your legacy, because your kid gonna be looking at you like, man, dad, you telling me to do all this stuff, but you didn't even operate like this, man. You was kind of a laughing stock. And it's just like, man, you don't never want to be in that position. Because like I said, I have my son, man, and I lead by example. That's why I always made sure I operated a certain way. I had the discipline. Man, I ain't out here doing no craziness, you know. And I think people, it's just like, you might not have the kids yet, But down the line, you know, these videos live on forever and all this stuff that's surrounded by your name. So it's just like, man, if you don't want to tighten up for anything else, do it for like your future lineage, your legacy, whatever, because yeah, you don't want this shit to come back up to haunt you and be like, damn, man, dad was out here just looking like a cornball, a straight up loser. And like I said, they get in them high school and junior high years, them kids are going to be teasing. Them kids is cold blooded, man. I know when we was growing up, boy, we was always snapping on something. And this is a whole different age where everything is like on video and it's going to live on forever. So yeah, you don't want stuff floating around, and man, none of us are perfect. So it's like, if you got into some shit, that's understandable. But like, man, you could always clean it up. And, you know, now when you're out here, you're talking, be like, yeah, man, I was tripping before, but now I got my shit together. So it's like, man, y'all people need to make that pivot, especially if you're got some status and stuff and you have this shit play out, man. You don't want to, you know, possibly roll the dice with your lineage, because leading by example is critical for like leadership. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I'm big on like legacy and stuff like that. And I try to tell people, I'm like, hey man, if you operate like this, a lot of times that stuff seeps into like people's generations. So we see those generational curses that happen. So yeah, I always try to tell dudes, I'm like, you don't want this stuff playing out because man, kids look for any excuse to be rebellious, and you don't want to give them no ammo and stuff, because when you're coming to them and you want them to do right and you're trying to give them lessons and stuff and let them dig up some shit where you was like doing the totally opposite, man, they gonna throw that shit in your face and you're gonna have a hard time explaining it, because they're gonna be valid to a certain degree. They're gonna be like, shit, you ain't do this and you wasn't doing this, and so you're gonna have hell to pay, man. So yeah, you don't want this type of shit playing out with your name associated with being a simp, or you know, moms out here. You don't want to be known as no 304 and shit. And then you have some kids and you gotta explain this stuff. Sit down with them, be like, yeah, you know, I wasn't masculine at this point. I was emotional. So yeah, clean this shit up.
I decided not to anymore, and that is through the idea that it leaves me vulnerable and exposed. Why? Because they could go on a platform at any time and make up stories because I make them feel a certain type of a way. And this was recently proven by a young lady who I haven't talked to in 2 years, who's currently married to a multi-millionaire, bringing me up when I have not mentioned her at all in front of her husband. On a platform. Like, it's absolutely insane to watch that happen. I was like, damn, baby girl, you still think about me? Leave me alone. Keep me and my name up out your marriage. But, you know, that's why I hesitate to just say no to having anybody get closer, by having randos get close to me, because they can leverage the value that you have created to get at you, to make you feel pain for what they feel that you did. Let's finish up.
Hey, bro,
And that was a good example that MTR brought up, because I remember when that kind of played out. He didn't get in his feelings or anything. Like I said, he just let that blew over. He made the corrections and he kept it pushing, because he could have easily got on there and did videos through kind of like what Axe doing right now. MTR could have easily did that and stuff. But it's like, nah, you know what? I do need to tighten up some things and let me pivot, and MTR made them adjustments, and that's why you don't see him in a lot of shit, because you know, he'll learn from it and keep it pushing, and he's not going to get emotional about that. So I give him props for conducting himself like that, and that's why all men should just take it. It's just like, man, shit, you know what? Let me learn from this. I could crack some jokes about it. So you see how he was even cracking jokes, and he kept it put, man. That's like water under the bridge now.
nobody's safe.
Yeah,
Nobody. I've been telling people that.
Real quick,
Nobody's safe.
In the Bible, King Solomon, right, known as the wisest man in the world. You know what he did? Everything under the sun. Women, money, sex, everything.
Okay.
He gave wisdom after that. How can you teach others when you've never been through it like that? You can't.
What?
So to your
God, Fresh. Fresh done fucked up the Bible and shit. Man, King Solomon, like, once he started messing with all the women and stuff, that's when his empire crumbled. So, man, he just didn't start doing all that stuff and gain wisdom. You know what I'm saying? So, bad example. And again, you could definitely give people input by having those experiences. So nobody's not saying that. So like DJ Academics, Fresh and them, they could definitely give you some insight because they've been down some of those paths and they could definitely give you some solid information. But just because people don't have super bad experiences, man, don't mean they can't tell you, give you any advice because they're going to give you the best. Avoidance is the best. You don't have to have like bad experiences. You don't have to have like all this major shit play out. You know how we know? Because there's a lot of celebrities that besides like movies coming out, you don't hear from them because they keep their shit quiet. They know how to maneuver and stuff like that. There's a lot of guys that's successful with women that, man, like they were even complaining about like, oh, we don't see none of their stuff. Yeah, exactly. they know how to maneuver. So I think sometimes, like I said, man, they're still in a growth phase where, like I said, they hit the high levels of success, but man, they need to start making that pivot, man. Stuff's not supposed to always be playing out. You don't need to show all your female and all that. Because in a sense, man, if they had the confidence catch up with the status and what they were able to do, man, they would understand like, man, me being out here and being this successful is the flex. These females are going to come and go. I don't need to show y'all shit. You know what I'm saying? So you just make assumptions. But deep down inside, when you carry yourself as a man, you got, like I said, you out there, you got your physique right, man. You got style. People already deep down know that you're capable of getting females. But that's why I said it's a deflection tactic when they're like, oh, who are they with? It's like, come on, motherfucker, you know what's up. Like, let's stop playing dumb. But you're the flex. When you hit these magnitudes that these guys did, man, what female with you is irrelevant. Because we all know as guys, man, a lot of those situations, unless you find the right one, that's like, man, they temporary. So guys got to just get out of the habit of like, oh man, I got to get the baddest chick. I don't require shit. I just pull her in so I can flex. And that's how a lot of men that's kind of insecure still gauge like who's the man. And that's dumb, man. That's a dumb metric. That's like jamming everybody up. So like I was just saying this on a panel that we were doing the other day when we were talking about Deontay Wilder and his situation. I was like, man, I give men respect. I say like if a dude had an average looking chick, but she was all into him. She was all about the family. She was about preserving his name, you know, protecting his image. I'm going to give him more respect than a dude that just has a bad chick. Because 9 times out of 10, like we all know now, like majority of these dudes that just have the bad chick coming around, we already know what comes with that. We know like a lot of these dudes got to be breaking off paper. We know time these dudes turn their back. That chick's like creeping off, doing all kind of shit. So it's no longer a flex. We just seen too much of this shit, how these females respond, how majority of these industry dudes just damn near date the same females and stuff. Because you look at the NBA, they all been damn near wifing up the same prototype of a female. You see the same females like after they get with the NBA star, they're with the rapper, they're with the B-list celebrity. So it just goes to show like that's not much of a flex. A lot of them chicks are just kind of like pass arounds, and like I said, they're targeting dudes that don't have no dignity and no pride and shit. So that's what they're literally doing. Look at Amber Rose, Brittany Renner. So those are just 2 major ones that come off the top of my head that just like literally just goes around trying to find dudes that, like I said, has no self-respect and will wife them up. So yeah, it's just no longer a flex. So yeah, show me the dude that has the female that's on board. She could be average looking and stuff, and that's where we need to start promoting as men. So men stop getting like lined up by these females.
Point, is it possible to tell somebody what to do if you're not doing the shit?
Do you
Okay, he must not be talking about me. What he's saying at the top level is correct. Yeah, if you're going to give advice, you would have had to have lived through a component of the things that you're giving advice about. But that has nothing to do with leaving yourself exposed by choosing to get close to an escort that now houses all this information about you to do damage with. You can ascertain that knowledge without public humiliation. Let's see.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like I said, man, it's almost like he feel like you got to be humiliated. And I do see a lot of guys, like even the ones I'm talking to, they be like, I think they feel like in order to be useful, they have to be used. And that's a mentality I got to try to break through. I'm like, man, why do y'all feel like y'all got to tolerate all this bullshit? But again, it ties into like the confidence level, guys not trying to put in all the work that they need to. Like I said, not humbling themselves and getting that information. And like I said, they just turn into the one trick ponies where it's just like, okay, man, I'm just going to throw paper at the problem and I'll just tolerate the behavior and shit. And it just does, it's not a long-term solution because them females are going to keep escalating up. They're going to keep pushing the line, the shit test, like everybody says, and until the blowout. But yeah, you can avoid all that shit. That ain't no experience. That's called bad experience. Like you can have good experiences. That's where you start putting the adjectives, the nouns and stuff on stuff. So yeah, you got good experiences, you got bad experiences, you got extreme, you got disrespectful experiences. So yeah, you want to be on a positive realm. But from what Fresh is sounding, it's like you should only have the bad ones before you can start speaking out and get some stuff. And that's a crazy thought.
Is there anything else?
Teach others when you've never been through it like that. You can't. So to your point, is it possible to tell somebody what to do if you're not doing the shit?
Do you is that whole for Nick Fuentes?
Okay, look like they're going to talk about something else. Anyway,
But all right, I'm gonna end the video right there. Like I said, it was a good conversation, man. And like I said, I think these guys, man, I'm not gonna be out here and be like, man, they ain't got no game or no shit like that. I just think, man, a lot of times men are just trying to, they want that trophy wife type thing to show out to everybody. Cause, I think a lot of times that's how that macho shit kind of came about. Everybody's like, oh, I gotta have the bad. Oh man, your chick ain't bad. What are you doing? It's all that flexing shit. And it really, all it is doing is costing dudes money. Cause now all those dudes gotta be buying handbags and, it's getting them caught up with these type of females that's, like I said, doing the allegations. So I think, man, as men now, we just got to start pivoting, stop worrying about that type of stuff and, start learning how to give each other that feedback and not taking it personal. Because, man, like I said, if I had a situation that played out in the public and it blew up, man, I'm going to take accountability. I'm going to come out there and be like, y'all know what? I appreciate y'all advice. I'm going to take it. I fucked up these situations. It ain't going to happen again, man. Shout out to y'all. I deserve all this. And by doing that, man, it would just avoid all these like back and forths, motherfuckers get mad, setting up boxing matches. Like I said, take y'all ass to y'all local gym and go do some MMA and shit. Y'all want to fight, man. If you want to fight that much, man, you would be signed up to some shit. You'll be training on a regular basis instead of this stuff. So yeah, I think we got to just grow up a little bit, man. And, including myself, man, because I be throwing some shots and shit. So I do need to calm down a little bit. But yeah, nah. But as far as this, man, just learn, man. Shit ain't that hard, man. We got to change some ways, man. But all right, y'all, man, I'm out of here. Peace.